The Daniel Boone cast scattered into places no Western ever filmed. 9 of the 12 people in this video are dead. One of them pulled a loaded gun out of an assassin's hand, and he is the one still alive at 93. Number 1 starts with a refusal. Walt Disney made Fess Parker the most famous face in America as Davy Crockett, then refused to sell him the rights to the character when Parker wanted to build a full series around him a decade later. So Parker changed the name on the buckskin and became Daniel Boone, the calm frontier father who solved most problems without ever drawing blood. He held something almost no star of his era held, an ownership stake, because his own company co-produced the show, and he directed 5 episodes himself. When it ended, he turned down the lead in McCloud, quit acting at 49, and built a second empire instead, a winery with 1,500 acres of vines in Los Olivos and waterfront hotels in Santa Barbara that took a citywide referendum to approve. Through all of it ran a single marriage to Marcella, from 1960 until the end, 50 years, with both of their children running the winery at his side. Parker died of natural causes on March 18, 2010, at his home in Santa Ynez, California, at 85, after several years of failing health. More than 1,000 people filled his memorial, and when the crowd was asked who had owned a coonskin cap as a child, a third of the room raised their hands. He was buried at Santa Barbara Cemetery, on a bluff above the Pacific, beside his parents, a small coonskin cap engraved on the stone between his dates. Daniel Boone was the father a nation trusted every Thursday night. Fess Parker spent the next 40 years proving the casting had been honest. The second name was pushed out the stockade gate at 17. By Veronica Cartwright's own account, producers began giving her character romantic storylines, and her on-screen mother objected that a courting teenage daughter made her look old, threatening to leave the series unless the girl was removed. Cartwright was gone after season 2, and Jemima Boone, the warm and capable Boone daughter just reaching her first on-screen romances, vanished without one line of explanation. What followed became one of the great second acts in the business. After years of being, in her words, either too young or too old, she rebuilt herself through acting classes and improv, then landed Invasion of the Body Snatchers and Alien, where she was originally cast as Ripley before Ridley Scott swapped her into Lambert, and where her horrified reaction to the chestburster scene was completely real, because nobody had warned the cast about the blood. That performance won her a Saturn Award, and the 1990s brought 3 Emmy nominations for ER and The X-Files. Her private life found its footing the same slow way. 2 early marriages ended in divorce before she married writer-director Richard Compton in 1982 and stayed for 25 years until his death in 2007. Today she is 77, still working, and starred in an independent horror film released in 2025, crediting Shirley MacLaine's kindness on a movie set when she was 12 for the length of her career. Jemima was a race to keep another woman feeling young. Veronica Cartwright outlasted nearly everyone on that call sheet, and the scream Hollywood remembers her for was real. At number 3, a man bought his own tomb years before he needed it. A granite grand piano, 9.5 feet long, costing $350,000, placed on his own lawn facing the James River. Jimmy Dean played Josh Clements, the easygoing Texas warm trader who drifted through Boonesborough in the final 3 seasons. Off-camera, he had already lived 2 full careers. The poor kid from Plainview whose mother taught him piano at 10, whose 1961 recording of Big Bad John hit number 1 and won a Grammy, and whose Washington television shows gave early breaks to Patsy Cline and Roy Clark. Then came the third career that eclipsed both, the Jimmy Dean Sausage Company, founded with his brother in 1969, its ad-libbed commercials making him one of the most familiar pitchmen in America. The company he built dropped him in the end. After Sara Lee bought the brand, executives phased him out, and in 2004 Dean said publicly that the company carrying his own name had let him go as its spokesman because he was too old. He gave $1 million to the Baptist University in his hometown anyway. On the evening of June 13, 2010, at 81, he was eating dinner in front of the television at his Virginia home when his wife Donna stepped out of the room. She returned to find him unresponsive, and he was declared dead at 7:54 p.m., 4 months before his scheduled induction into the Country Music Hall of Fame. He was entombed in the granite piano on his estate at Chaffin's Bluff, overlooking the James River, beneath an epitaph adapted from the last line of Big Bad John. Josh Clements was a trader just passing through. Jimmy Dean built an American fortune out of a song and a sausage recipe, and he wrote his own final line. Fourth comes the woman the industry dropped the moment the cameras stopped. Patricia Blair spent 6 seasons as the female lead of a show watched by 30 million people, and when it ended in 1970, the phone essentially stopped ringing. A few small parts, a bit role in The Electric Horseman in 1979, one sitcom episode in 1988, and then silence. She played Rebecca Boone, the red-haired anchor of the cabin who made an underwritten frontier wife feel like a real partner. Born Patsy Lou Blake in Fort Worth, she had modeled as a teenager, been renamed by Warner Brothers producers who wanted something more sophisticated, and shared the screen with Rathbone, Lugosi, and Chuck Connors before she was 30. Her one marriage began mid-run, on Valentine's Day 1965, to land developer Martin Kolber. It lasted 28 years before their 1993 divorce, and he died the following year. She left show business entirely and produced trade shows in New York and New Jersey, so far from Hollywood that when she died, on September 9, 2013, at her home in North Wildwood, New Jersey of breast cancer, at 80, the news was confirmed to the press by a friend and neighbor because there was no publicist left to call. No cemetery has ever been recorded for her. Television's most watched frontier wife has no marked place where anyone can visit her, and that absence is its own quiet ending. Rebecca Boone held the family together in every episode. Patricia Blair walked away from the business so completely that it never even learned where she came to rest. Before the next name ever set foot in Boonesborough, he spent 12 years knocking down quarterbacks, and one night in a hotel kitchen changed American history. Entry 5 begins on June 5, 1968, in the pantry of the Ambassador Hotel. Rosey Grier was guarding a pregnant Ethel Kennedy when the shots began, and seconds later he was jamming his bare hand under the hammer of Sirhan's revolver so it could not fire again, tearing the gun away, and then doing something even harder, physically shielding the assassin from a crowd trying to beat him to death, because Grier refused to allow a second killing that night. 13 months later, he joined the show as Gabe Cooper, a formerly enslaved man living free on the frontier, one of the few substantial black regular roles on any 1960s Western. Grier had come to it from 12 NFL seasons as a defensive tackle, an anchor of the original fearsome foursome with the Rams. 300 pounds of documented gentleness. The years after the show only widened the contrast. He sang a song on a children's record assuring boys that crying is all right, published a book teaching needlepoint to men, became an ordained minister in 1983, and spent 4 decades running inner-city youth programs. His son, born in 1972, carries the middle name Kennedy. Widowed in 2011 after a long marriage to Margie, they divorced once and remarried each other. He wed schoolteacher Sidney Sealer in 2013. He is 93 years old as of this recording, reported to be the longest-living former NFL player, and the Rams still mark his birthdays publicly. Gabe Cooper was a strong man finding his footing in a free life. Rosey Grier spent one terrible night proving that strength and gentleness can live in the same pair of hands. The sixth name walked away from $20,000 a week and nearly lost his house for it. Ed Ames was the youngest of 11 children of Ukrainian Jewish immigrants in Massachusetts. 4 of his siblings died in childhood. And with 3 of his brothers, he sold millions of records as the Ames Brothers before the group played its last date in Las Vegas on New Year's of 1961. Broke afterward, he retrained as a stage actor, played Chief Bromden opposite Kirk Douglas on Broadway, and was spotted there by Fox Scouts who handed him Mingo, the Oxford-educated Cherokee who refused an English earldom to stay with his people. A Jewish singer from Malden was cast as a Native American because of his dark hair and sharp features, standard practice for that era, and he gave the part a baritone dignity that made Mingo the most quietly subversive presence on the show. His tomahawk throw on The Tonight Show in 1965, the blade landing squarely in the groin of a cowboy target, produced what is often called the longest sustained laugh in the program's history. When My Cup Runneth Over reached #1 in 1967, he left after season 4, and Mingo simply vanished from the series without explanation, exactly the way Jemima had. Decades of touring musicals followed, along with a UCLA theater degree earned at 47 while working, part ownership of the Phoenix Suns, and a second marriage to Jean in 1998 that carried him to the end. Ames died of Alzheimer's disease on May 21, 2023 at his Beverly Hills home at 95, the last surviving Ames brother. He was buried at Pierce Brothers Westwood Village Memorial Park in Los Angeles, the Garden of Serenity, Estate Lot 15. Mingo was a man who kept refusing the easier inheritance. Ed Ames kept choosing the harder room his whole life, and he kept winning it. 7 belongs to a boy who stood in the wrong line. Darby Hinton's father, actor Ed Hinton, died in a plane crash off Catalina Island when Darby was about a year old, and his mother never remarried. At 6, she dropped him at the Fox Gate to audition for The Sound of Music while she parked the car. He joined the wrong line, read for Daniel Boone by mistake, and was cast as Israel even though the studio wanted an older boy. Israel Boone was the audience's kid on the frontier, the son with a pet goose and a gift for finding trouble. For the fatherless 6-year-old, the set became the home he was missing. Fess Parker turned into a genuine father figure, a bond that held for 45 years, all the way to a hospital visit months before Parker died and a eulogy Hinton delivered at the memorial. There is one more strange thread. Hinton was born on August 19, 1957, the 175th anniversary to the day of the real Israel Boone's death in battle. After the show, he deliberately cracked the wholesome image with drug dealer roles, finished school in Switzerland, sailed 3 round-the-world academic voyages, then worked steadily from Magnum, PY, to Days of Our Lives. He is 68 now, a father of 4, still on the Western convention circuit, hosting fan viewing parties with old co-stars and selling a memoir about the whole ride. Israel Boone had the steadiest father on television. Darby Hinton, who had none at home, found one on a soundstage and got to keep him for 4.5 decades. The next man turned down the movie role Marilyn Monroe wanted him to repeat. And his story ends in the hardest place this list will go. Number 8 is the hardest story here, and it deserves to be told plainly. Albert Salmi was a Brooklyn-born son of Finnish immigrants, an actor's studio method man who starred as Bo Decker in the original Broadway production of Bus Stop, then refused to repeat the role in the Marilyn Monroe film because he considered movie work beneath the stage. The part went to Don Murray, who got an Oscar nomination for it. Salmi played Yadkin, the rough-edged frontier companion at Boone's shoulder through the first season, and went on to more than 150 screen credits, 3 Twilight Zone episodes among them, along with the Western Heritage Wrangler Award his daughters called his most cherished honor. In 1983, he moved his wife, Roberta, and their 2 daughters from Los Angeles to Spokane, Washington, where he semi-retired, taught acting, and did community theater. The marriage collapsed in February 1990. The couple separated, Roberta filed for divorce and obtained a restraining order, and court filings and police accounts described a man in severe clinical depression. On the morning of April 22, 1990, according to those police accounts, Salmi shot and killed Roberta in the kitchen of the family home, then took his own life elsewhere in the house. A friend checking on Roberta found them the next day. He was 62. Roberta was the victim of that morning, and nothing about his career changes it. What remains is what his daughters did next. They chose forgiveness and spoke publicly of the father who once stopped a rolling film take because he had knocked over a little girl playing an extra, his own daughter, and turned back, cameras running, to ask if she was hurt. He was cremated, his niche resting at Greenwood Memorial Terrace in Spokane, beneath a marker his daughters chose that calls him simply their dad. Yadkin watched Boone's back for a single season. Albert Salmi left 2 daughters who somehow found a way to keep the best of him and grieve the rest. Which of these 12 lives has stayed with you the most? Tell me in the comments, because half a century later this cast still surprises people. The 9th name is a voice you have heard thousands of times without ever learning it. Dallas McKennon played Cincinnatus, the Boonesborough innkeeper and storekeeper who saw everything and commented on most of it across all 6 seasons. Away from that counter, he was one of the most heard performers in America. Gumby, Archie Andrews, Buzz Buzzard in the Woody Woodpecker cartoons, voices woven through Lady and the Tramp, Sleeping Beauty, 101 Dalmatians, and Mary Poppins, the safety announcement that still opens every ride on Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, and the deaf old man in the Haunted Mansion graveyard. His own beginnings were harder than any of it sounds. His mother died when he was a child. He was raised on a relative's Oregon farm, and he served in the Army Signal Corps in Alaska during the war. In 1942, he married his childhood sweetheart Betty, and the marriage ran 67 years and produced 6 daughters and 2 sons. In 1968, mid-run on the show, he moved the whole family to Cannon Beach, Oregon, and commuted to Hollywood rather than raise 8 children in Los Angeles. Retirement turned him into an Oregon Trail historian, touring Northwest schools with songs and stories. McKennon died of natural causes on July 14, 2009, at a care center in Raymond, Washington, 5 days short of his 90th birthday. He was cremated, and his ashes were scattered at sea, into the Pacific. Cincinnatus never left the village in 6 years. Dallas McKennon never really left America at all. His voice still opens the mine train, every single day. If stories like these matter to you the way they matter to me, subscribe. There are more casts whose real lives deserve this kind of care. At number 10, a death kept quiet for 3 whole months. Robert Logan died on May 6, 2024, of natural causes in Estero, Florida, at 82. And his family told no one until August, finally announcing it with a statement describing him as the living embodiment of selfless family love. That privacy was the ending his life had been pointing toward for decades. Logan played Jericho Jones, the impetuous young frontiersman who traveled at Boone's side for a dozen episodes, a heartthrob slot he filled straight off replacing Kooky as the parking lot kid on 77 Sunset Strip. The industry gave him one hard lesson. He starred in the pilot for A Man Called Sloan, and when NBC picked the series up in 1979, the network handed his role to Robert Conrad. By then, he had already found the lane that made him a household face for a generation of children. The Wilderness Dad, of the adventures of the Wilderness Family and its sequels, the eldest of 7 Brooklyn kids playing a father who chose mountains over cities. Life imitated the movies in 1985 when he married Alina Milian, a Cuban-American Pan Am stewardess and model, and retired from acting after their son was born, trading the career for the family outright and spending his last decades writing screenplays and living outdoors. Alina cared for him through several late-life health scares. Per his family's obituary, he was laid to rest at Cedar Grove Cemetery, on the campus of the University of Notre Dame in Indiana. Jericho Jones was the young man who could never sit still. Robert Logan chose stillness twice, once for his family and once more when they kept his passing to themselves for an entire season. 11 opens with an Olympic tryout that failed. Don Pedro Colley threw the discus for a place on the 1960 United States team and missed the cut, studied architecture at the University of Oregon, then spent 5 years in San Francisco theater until Hollywood found the 6'3" frame and the voice built to match it. He arrived in Boonesborough as Gideon, a man who had fought his way out of slavery into a free life, in episodes that let the show face that subject more directly than most westerns of the decade dared. From there, his career ran through every strange world the industry could build. A mutant in Beneath the Planet of the Apes, the android SRT in George Lucas's first feature, THX 1138, the blaxploitation era alongside Fred Williamson, and finally the role most viewers know without knowing his name, Sheriff Ed Little on The Dukes of Hazzard. His obituary names a former partner, 2 children, and 2 grandchildren. When pancreatic cancer came, he did what almost nobody in this business does. He went home. Colley died on October 11, 2017, at 79, after a long fight at his house in Klamath Falls, Oregon, the same town where he was born, and he was buried there at Klamath Memorial Park. Gideon was a man who crossed a continent to be free. Don Pedro Colley traveled through every imagined world Hollywood offered and chose to finish exactly where he began. One name remains, and you have watched him hundreds of times without once seeing his face. The 12th and final name never showed you his face. Ted White was wounded at Iwo Jima as a teenage Marine, one of 4 amphibious assaults he survived with the 4th Division after enlisting at 17. And he carried that toughness into a Hollywood career of more than 160 credits, most of them invisible. He was Fess Parker's stunt double and stunt coordinator on this show. Whenever Daniel Boone fell from a height, took a punch, or came off a horse, it was usually White inside the buckskin, a 6'4" Oklahoman matching Parker's rare frame. His son remembered visiting the set as a boy and watching his father miss the corner of a landing pad on a high fall, then wave from the stretcher as the ambulance took him away. Before that, he had doubled John Wayne, Clark Gable, and Richard Boone. After it came Planet of the Apes, Escape from New York, and, in 1984, the role he accepted only because he needed the money, Jason Voorhees in Friday the 13th, The Final Chapter. White demanded his name be left off the credits, partly out of anger at how the young cast was treated, and once threatened to walk off the set until a freezing young actress was treated decently. He and his wife Jerry raised 2 sons in Woodland Hills, with summers in Colorado among close friends. White died peacefully in his sleep at home on October 14, 2022, at 96. No burial or interment has ever been made public. The man who did all the falling has no marked place for anyone to visit. Daniel Boone never truly fell off a horse in 6 seasons. Ted White fell for him every single time, and he asked for nothing on the screen to prove it. One granite piano above the James River. Ashes drifting somewhere in the Pacific. A niche in Spokane. A bluff over Santa Barbara. Boonesborough's people rest a continent apart.